The endocrine system, the urinary system, and the reproductive system. How do those all relate to nutrition? The endocrine system is primarily based on glands and hormones they produce. Now you have your major glands that produce most of the hormones, also some other ones you wouldn't necessarily think of that produce hormones as well. But those hormones, they need proteins to be produced. So if you can't have enough protein to make the hormones, it can't control the production adequately. You also have hormones that help to control metabolism. Your thyroid gland produces T3 and T4. That's helping with metabolism, and therefore metabolism is based on how you are taking your nutrients and breaking them down. You can also think about the pancreas. The pancreas, part of the digestive system, but also endocrine, is going to secrete different hormones. What we're focusing on, though, is insulin and glucagon. Those two hormones are going to help regulate the glucose levels in your blood. Now we know from previous videos that glucose levels are important. Brain and pretty much any other organ in the body. So you have to make sure that you have enough. Insulin is going to help to lower your blood glucose levels. So just after a meal, you'll have insulin primarily. Then you have glucagon. That's going to help bring glucose levels up when they're low, to make sure there's enough glucose in your blood for all the different organs that are necessary. Another example, thyroid and parathyroid glands. The thyroid produces calcitonin. Parathyroid produces parathyroid hormone. Together, they regulate the calcium levels in your blood. Your calcium comes from what you're eating and ingesting. But you must also tie enough vitamin D to help with the absorption in the intestines. Again, so now we're endocrine, going to digestion, looking at nutrition. A lot of things are really tying together here. Think about diabetes type 2. Now, there's a lot of research ongoing about diabetes type 2, but the consensus currently is that a high-fat, high-sugar-based diet can cause and lead to diabetes type 2, where your body cannot handle the amount of glucose and insulin appropriately. And this is one of those things where quite often it's a dietary basis. There is some hereditary looking, but there's also a dietary component. So the endocrine system not only will help to regulate metabolism and regulate your nutrition, it also needs your nutrition to do that. I guess it's one of those, which came first, chicken or egg? Because both are in each other's nature. You need it to regulate, but you need it to make it in the first place. So you make the hormones, proteins, but you need to regulate the intake of nutrients from the hormones. So they both kind of need each other. All right, let's roll into the urinary system. In the urinary system, think about kidneys, urinary bladder, ureters, urethra. What's the purpose of the urinary system? Well, it cleans the blood. It's helping with pH balance, blood pressure control, as well as red blood cell production. So that's a whole lot of stuff. What does that have to do with nutrition? Well, nutrition, when you're eating, do you think every food you eat is perfectly sterile clean? You probably don't want to know what's on some of those foods you're eating. Even if you're eating, I'm eating organic, perfectly healthy, there's no pesticides. Great, that's awesome. But what about the little bugs, the little tiny insects, the bacteria that are there? Did you get all those off? Maybe, maybe not. That's where the urinary system comes in. Those will be found then potentially in your bloodstream broken down. You want to get rid of those components, get them out. How about blood pressure control? Well, if your blood pressure goes too high, all of a sudden then it's not healthy for the heart, it's not healthy for anything else. That can be based off of certain intake of nutrients. If you have a high salt diet, that can increase blood pressure. Red blood cell production. Well, the kidneys produce erythropoietin. It's a hormone that tells your bones, the red bone marrow, to make red blood cells. So what does that have to do with nutrition? Red blood cells need iron as well as proteins for adequate production, not to mention a few other vitamins and minerals. Again, nutrition. Well, the urinary system, the kidneys, they even help with the final step of vitamin D synthesis. Without enough vitamin D, you can't get enough calcium in. So again, we're tying back in nutrition there. Your kidneys are highly vascularized. That's why they can do all this. They have tons of blood flow coming through. When you're at rest, about 25% of your blood flow, so that's every heartbeat, about 25% goes into your kidneys. You're constantly filtering and monitoring what's there, adjusting what needs to be adjusted. Is blood pressure off? Too much salt? Is not enough calcium? Your kidneys are monitoring. They monitor all the electrolytes in your blood. Now you need your electrolytes because they help balance out all the ions in your body. That's why after a long sporting event or a really hot day, you're sweating a lot. You'll say, okay, make sure you rebalance your electrolytes. Drink enough water. Well, that's where things like Gatorade and Powerade make all their money, make their millions of dollars by advertising to people that think they need to replenish that way. So electrolytes, specifically sodium, potassium, and calcium, are three of the biggest ones regulated and monitored by the urinary system. So it balances all out, and it works with not just the endocrine, cardiovascular, skeletal, the muscles, the digestive, works with pretty much everything. All right, let's get into the reproductive system. Reproductive obviously is male and female, are be two different aspects here. Both systems need proteins to make their hormones. Male, making testosterone, need protein. Female, making estrogen, progesterone, need protein. Production of egg and sperm. Well, the production and maturation of both needs various nutrients to make sure they're healthy gametes. And then on the female side, if she is pregnant, that pregnancy needs a whole increased amount of nutrients for the healthy development of that growing embryo. So you increase all those, hence the idea of the prenatal vitamins, a healthy diet, why you get the checkups. It's all trying to make sure there's enough nutrition and a balanced, healthy diet for the new growing baby. So again, plenty of things here to tie back in, not just reproductive, but also back into the endocrine, as well as you can tie every single thing else in there because, in the case of pregnancy, that's the whole body growing. That's all 11 systems. So nutrition, it really is tied into every single one of these body systems. So until the next video.